Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. This is our Sunday edition, the football special. We're a show that covers all your Northeastern sports, New York, Boston, and Philly. You can follow us on live on Mac's Sports Facebook page. Just go to MacMan at MacMan62 Facebook search, and it'll bring you right to us. You can Google Mac and Jack Sports. Find us live on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. Like, share, follow, and subscribe wherever you can. We do have a new Instagram account where we have all the action from the local sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. We'll be posting there soon, so you'll be able to see what we're doing. I'm Mac with my co-host, Jack Hirsch, a legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack Hirsch is our sports historian gatekeeper. So how you doing today, my New York friend?
Mac, maybe you should leave out that last sentence after you stumped me on the trivia questions yesterday.
Yeah.
It's a little embarrassing to hear you say that. So I'll take the first sentence. I'll skip on the second one. Listen, I was just thinking a moment ago. I didn't think about this at all until, like I said a moment ago,
Sure.
We're living through a historical time in New York football, okay? The year 2020, in the future, historians are going to look back on this year and say the Jets and Giants were combined 1-13 as they were about to hit the midway point. And when's it ever been that bad? They're going to look decades from now as this being maybe the worst time, the worst segment in New York football history.
Yeah, just thinking about that, you're correct, Jack, because when the Giants were bad, the Jets were good. When the Giants were good, the Jets were bad at one time. Both teams were good at one time. But, yeah, I can't remember both New York teams in the city anyway, home in Jersey, being this bad at one time. I really can't. It's a great point. Today on the show, Jack, we have fantasy football expert from Fantasy Football Faceoff, Anthony Cervino, will be joining us around 8:30. And then we'll have the host of Sports Skope podcast, Robert Butler, to come in, and he'll give us his opinions on some of the biggest news in the NFL. Before we get to the NFL, we'll go ahead and we'll cover some sports updates. And we've talked about this on the show before, Jack. Of course, we cover boxing quite a bit on our show. There was two fights last night. Cervino Tank Davis, who was 24-0, knocks out Leo Santa Cruz in the 6th round with a vicious uppercut. The fight was pretty close to that point. I don't want to say that, Cervino wasn't winning the fight, but Leo Santa Cruz was holding his own until he caught that uppercut in the 6th round, Jack.
Going into the fight, Gervonta Davis was on the brink of being a major star. He had all the ability, so on, but he had issues outside of the ring. This fight with Leo Santa Cruz, in which he knocked him cold with one uppercut, puts him in the stardom category right beside Teofimo Lopez, who defeated Vasily Lomachenko. And the nice thing about it, those guys are the same weight. They should be on the collision course, but of course they have two different promoters. Teofimo Lopez is promoted by Bob Arum. Gervonta Davis is promoted by Floyd Mayweather Jr. And Arum and Mayweather don't always see eye to eye. None of the promoters usually see eye to eye. But that could be a potential major super fight down the road.
Yeah, Davis came on, and the first thing he said was, "I'm a pay-per-view star." Sounds a lot like he is,
He may be turned into one yesterday. What did Dizzy Dean used to say? If you could do it, it ain't bragging.
That's the right. That's a very good point. And Usyk beats Chisora in 12. Looking forward to a title match with Joshua. It didn't seem like Usyk was his best fight, but he did fight him off, and he did win in the 12th. So
Alexander Usyk, one of the greatest cruiserweight champions of all time. But now you're moving up a division to the big boys.
Right.
And it wasn't an overly impressive performance against Chisora. Chisora is what's known in the business as a gatekeeper. He loses to the elite guys, but
Right.
can beat all the rest. So Usyk got on the side of the elite guys, but not by much. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you think if, real quick, if Usyk did fight Joshua? Do you think Joshua would beat him, or do you think Usyk might have a chance at upsetting him?
Hard to tell at what place Joshua's in right now. He's had to lay off and so on. And he's only had the one fight since losing to Andy Ruiz a year and a half ago. Joshua's the bigger guy. Usyk has more skills than any other heavyweight, but he's not a physical force.
Right.
So right now you'd have to give Joshua an edge. You know, he could control him with the jabs, got more power. He's going to be able to reach Usyk. You'd give Joshua an edge right now, but it's too dangerous a fight for Joshua to risk with Tyson Fury there, because the Tyson Fury fight against Joshua, both guys win no matter what, because if you lose, you make a fortune of money. You win, great. You lose, whatever. Then they're planning on signing for 2 fights, a 2-fight deal, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, where the money would be off the charts.
And before we get to the other updates and our big football show, Wilder was in the news saying that Fury cheated. And what is wrong with this guy? I mean, listen, he had potential. He wasn't the greatest boxer. He had a lot of power. He definitely has a lot of power. But it seems like something went wrong upstairs with this guy lately, Jack. I don't know whether it's I think he even changed promoters, if I'm correct. I'm not sure. I think I saw something.
He let go of Mark Breland because Mark Breland threw in the towel against Tyson Fury in their last fight. Wilder hasn't come to grips with being beaten. Look, when you have something like 40 fights and you've had 39 knockouts, the only blemish on Wilder's record before this fight, before this Fury rematch, was the first fight against Fury, in which was called a draw. But Wilder knocked him down twice and nearly had him out in the last round.
Right.
So that didn't tarnish him at all. But the way he lost the rematch, getting dominated by Fury, fighters tend to make excuses, because if you just accept defeat in a way accepting the opponent's better than you are, but the way Wilder's handled it, it's been really off base. And Fury's gloves, there's no evidence they were loaded at all.
Right. We won't really talk, and there's not. The coverage is starting to come back to college football. We really don't cover it that much because of all the cancellations. You know, the leagues either not playing or starting up late, and the COVID cancellations. But just quick in the locals, Jack. College football with Boston College, Clemson without Trevor Lawrence defeats Boston College 34-28. Boston College had a quick lead. The backup quarterback, who's a rookie, can't recall his name off the top of my head right now, had a great game. And, of course, Clemson comes back to beat him. They're saying that Trevor Lawrence will not play against Notre Dame in a huge game.
Huge game.
Yeah,
Mac.
Yeah, and Boston College, I mean, they're always a tough team. They've won a championship once. So they were up ahead. They just couldn't put Clemson away.
Well, a couple of other things with college games. I don't know whether you saw the Rutgers game where they had that crazy lateral, 8 laterals returned for a touchdown. It ultimately got called back on a technicality because there was an illegal man downfield, but it was fun. And also Florida, there was a big fight with their players on the field because they felt their quarterback was hit late.
Right.
Believe me, the word of that has circulated around the Dallas Cowboy locker room. If the Cowboys play tonight, their players are going to be a little edgy. Anything that's perceived as a late hit, I wouldn't be surprised if there are fights on the field tonight with the Cowboys and Eagles, because the Cowboys have been under fierce criticism, especially in the Dallas area.
Yeah, I guess Byron Williams brought that up, saying that was the talk of Texas right now. And the Eagles will be ready for it too, Jack. I can imagine the head coach is saying, listen, they've been made fun of all week since that. Be ready, because anything that's close, Cowboys are going to be all over it. So we'll see what the defense does. and that tonight. And we'll get to that later. Penn State loses to Ohio State. I don't know if it was competitive or not, Jack. I mean, Penn State is now 0-2.
It was 38-25, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
but yeah,
Ohio State seemed to be in control, but
yeah. I mean, the Penn State and Ohio State, that's always a big game, a big rivalry. And right now, Penn State is 0-2, and they don't look like they're playing as good as they normally do. The big rivalry match we talked about, the matchup between Michigan State and Michigan, touching quick on Harbaugh, where he hasn't beaten Ohio State. Well, I think he's like 1-2 against Michigan State too. So even though he's winning games with a winning record, the big rivalries, he's still coming up short.
I'm really surprised Harbaugh hasn't found his way back into the NFL.
Yeah.
Really surprised. He had a lot of success with the 49ers.
Right.
They nearly won the Super Bowl when they were there. And I'm just surprised he hasn't found his way back into the NFL, like I said. But something about being at Michigan is comfortable for him there. He's a very intense type individual. I'm not a big fan of his. There's a such thing sometimes it's becoming a little too intense where your players are a bit uptight, because I think players do, to a large degree, feed off a coach's personality. Okay? A coach has to know how to relax his players, motivate them, get them up. But with Harbaugh, there's such like a tension there.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, Jack, because we hear of a lot of college coaches that don't make it in the pros. Nick Saban, Lou Holtz, and even the Seattle head coach had a bad stint with the Patriots.
Pete Carroll. Well, Pete Carroll also, he coached the Jets, so on.
Right.
I mean, he had moderate success, Carroll.
Right.
Yeah.
But you rarely hear of NFL coaches going down. I can think of a couple off the top of my head. I can think of the Giants coach when he first went down to Alabama, Ray Perkins, who ended up taking the Giants to a wild card game, and then gave the team to Parcells as he went back to his alma mater, Alabama, and he didn't do well when he replaced Bear Bryant, which is a very tough thing to do anyway. But he didn't have a lot of success, and now you see Harbaugh, even though he has a winning record and he did well in the pros, is kind of losing out down at Michigan. And not that, like I said, not that Michigan doesn't have a winning record under him, but it seems like the biggest games he has problems with. So I
think there's a difference, Mac. When you're in college, you're in charge of boys. When you go to the NFL, you're in charge of men.
Right.
And I hate to use the term boys because you do have 21-year-olds, who you're coaching in college and so on. And it's a whole different thing because the players have taken their next step in their lives. Now they have money for the first time in the NFL. They have independence, a lot of them, for the first time in their life. And the coach has to deal with that. And also the plays you're running, such as the wishbone, where that could be successful in college. Now you go to the NFL, and everyone is quick. All your tackles, your linebackers, they can get to the ball a lot quicker. So that extra one step you'll have in college where you can execute a play, all of a sudden it gets stuffed in the NFL. With Steve Spurrier, a wildly successful coach in college, he coached the Washington Redskins. It didn't work out when he thought he would use the same college philosophy. He said it best. He says, I wasn't as good a coach as I thought I was. And that's what happens a lot of times when they coach in the NFL coming from college.
Well, the coach, I'm trying to remember his name. It slips me right now, from Oregon, who ran that hurry up, run, 50 plays in 50 minutes.
Kelly.
Yeah, when he came up to the Eagles. Yeah, he came up to Eagles, he didn't have too much success either. So, I mean, it just surprises me that a professional head coach who took a team to the Super Bowl, almost won it. I mean, they were ahead, and the Ravens came back out of nowhere to beat them. Unbelievable comeback after the lights went out. I remember the game, and they came back on. Now he goes down to college, and you would think, same thing with Ray Perkins to a point. But even Harbaugh had more success than Perkins. You would think that he would go down, and it would be easier to work with the kids than it is the adults, and it doesn't seem to work out that way, at least.
Well, he turned the 49er fortunes around. The 49ers were one of the weaker teams in the NFL when he took over that program. So you would think, right, he would go to Michigan. He's had enough time to turn it around, and he hasn't done it. But a lot of times the administration, the athletic department, the president, they like the coach. They're comfortable with the coach, and they believe in the coach, and they're willing to stay the course. That's an admirable thing, that they're willing to stay the course. Fans usually aren't willing to stay the course. I mean, they want to see results in a year or two, and they're not willing to have the type of faith in the guy to wait 7, 8 years or whatever it takes.
Right. The one of the heroes, turn to baseball real quick. Dustin Pedroia was very important in the Red Sox's the Red Sox World Series. Is planning on retiring. We talked a little bit before the show, and you asked me when the last time he really played. He probably should have retired a few years ago, but he has announced that he is probably retiring.
Shame on you, Mac. You missed the boat during our debate question when we talked about most underrated player locally.
There you go.
What a nice pick Dustin Pedroia would have been.
Right?
What a nice pick. Instead of you picking a Hall of Famer left row.
Are you still holding that against me, Jack?
Pedroia, you know what I like about him? What warmed my heart? I read, while he wasn't playing and didn't know whether he would ever play again, he traveled with his family. And for all the millions he made, they would stay at Holiday Inn Expresses. Not the regular Holiday Inn, not the high class, but like the lower level Holiday Inn Expresses, which are very nice. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
That was like a common person. Guys like you and I would stay at places like that, the Holiday Inn Express. So could you imagine going to that little buffet breakfast and seeing Dustin Pedroia there after he stayed at all the fancy hotels as a big leaguer? So that kind of warmed my heart.
It could be cheap too, Jack. He just might be cheap. You never know. So, I mean,
thrifty, not thrifty, Mac. Come on, thrifty.
Okay. It looks like, Jack, for more Patriots rumors to be spread about defensive back Gilmore. He's got his house for sale. He's, there's talk of him being traded, and now he's probably not going to play today against in a huge game against the Buffalo Bills, Jack. Is this another part of the rumors? Are they getting ready to trade him?
Let me tell you something. The Patriots will absolutely get a number 1 draft choice for Stephon Gilmore, one of the best defensive players in the NFL. How high a draft choice, I don't know. But he's practically gone as far as I could see. I just don't see him being part of the Patriot plans moving forward. And him not playing today, is he injured that bad? Does he have an understanding with the Patriots that they're going to trade him and he's willing to sit the game out?
Right.
I mean, I don't know what the deal is with him, but we are going to know in a couple of days. So this is because the trading deadline, I believe, is November 3rd. So, a move's going to be made, and he's going to help some team. And probably he's going to go to a team that's contending for the Super Bowl. Okay, in all probability.
Yeah.
I
mean, I don't know, Jack, because I don't know what his contract is. I don't know if he has a no trade clause in there. I don't think a lot of the Patriots have a no trade clause in their contract. I don't know if the Patriots would go along with that. But when you trade anybody, really, Jack, you don't have to trade him to the teams he wants to go to. I mean, it makes for an easier trade with a team where you trade him where he'll be someplace unhappy. We've talked about Ingram, possibly the Patriots inquiring about him before on the show, and the Giants do need a defensive back, and he's one of the better ones. I can imagine him and Bradbury in the backfield together. What a tandem that would be. For Ingram and maybe somebody else, maybe not a first rounder, maybe a lower draft choice. I mean, I could see that happening. I think that, like I said, I think the Giants would have to give up more than just Evan Ingram, but that would be a sweet deal for the Giants for sure.
Well, Evan Ingram, former number 1 pick, the potential is still there. And I don't think the Giants are going to want to give up on him so easy. I think he's not going to be traded. He's going to be a Giant next year. and he's going to be a Giant, moving forward. What people don't consider when they say, let's just trade a guy because he's not helping our team that much, what are you getting in return that's going to help you more? I mean, you're going to trade Evan Ingram for a fourth round draft pick, for example, where you could get a halfway decent player, but you're not going to get anyone of his caliber.
Well, if you could pick up Gilmore for Ingram and maybe another.
Oh, and the Patriots wouldn't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
you would have
maybe if the Giants, for example, trade their number one draft choice next year for Stephen Gilmore, I think the Patriots would do it because it would be a high draft choice. Would it be good for the Giants? Believe it or not, it would, because you're getting a proven commodity.
Right.
And you're not going to get anyone in the draft probably better than him, but you're going to get a heck of a good player. And the Patriots, too, addressing their own quarterback situation, Belichick's probably thinking, if I could get a high number one pick, and we have our own number one pick, and we don't play well the rest of the year, I'm going to have two fairly high number one draft choices for next year. I throw in a number one for the year after, and who knows what could happen. Strange things could happen. You could give up two more picks on top of that, give up 5 picks in all, 3 of them first rounders, and guess what? Maybe you could nab Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
you never know, and it's worth it, to get your quarterback of the future.
Yeah.
So Belichick is thinking of all those things now, and whether he pulls the trigger on these things, we're going to know after today. They lose to Buffalo, they're out of it. If they beat Buffalo, they think one way or the other. But all signs are pointing, no, regardless of that, Stephen Gilmore's going somewhere. And I think they prefer to trade him to a team with a lesser record, which would mean a higher draft choice.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%, Jack. You had a couple of things you wanted to mention before we get to Anthony Cervino and some of our updates as far as, some hirings and stuff like that. Why don't you go ahead and give us those, Jack?
Yeah, those things in baseball, a couple of managerial hirings, A.J. Hinch being given another chance, going to the Detroit Tigers. He was suspended a year from baseball. No team was allowed to talk to him until the World Series was done. 30 minutes after the World Series ended, he got a call from the Tigers telling him to get himself on an airplane to see them.
Right.
Talk about wanting a guy bad enough. Tony La Russa going to the Chicago White Sox at the age of 76.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool for us older guys. I mean, to see... Tony La Russa starting to manage again at age 76. Joe Biden, his age, Donald Trump, his, So you got a lot of veteran guys doing stuff. But with Tony La Russa, I'm not the biggest fan because of a story I read in Sports Illustrated, what he did in his personal life. That's another issue altogether. But as a manager, you got to give him his due.
Yeah.
He's been a yardstick of measurement for other managers and head coaches, like guys like Bill Belichick. They look up to Tony La Russa for the wisdom he has and so on. Can Tony La Russa relate to the modern player, Mac?
Yeah.
We don't know, because Tony La Russa has complained about a number of social issues. And you're living in a new day and age where you have to adjust to, the players, the stands they're taking. I don't mean you have to agree with them, but you have to be able to coexist with them.
Yeah.
Whether Tony La Russa tries to force his beliefs on his players or not, that remains to be seen. And Mac, with Bobby Valentine too, he was Red Sox manager for a year. People forget that. And what Bobby Valentine did when he became the manager of the Red Sox, rather than hook up with the veteran players and say, what do I have to do, so on, Valentine tried to discipline everyone to his way of to his way of doing things. And because Terry Francona got fired by supposedly being too close to the players, Valentine wanted to go the opposite route.
Right.
It didn't work. It was an absolute disaster. You mentioned Dustin Pedroia before. Dustin Pedroia, a mild-mannered guy, supposedly didn't like Bobby Valentine.
Yeah.
John Veritek, their catcher, mild-mannered guy, supposedly didn't like Bobby Valentine, and so on. So you have to kind of adjust to the
Yeah,
players.
definitely. And speaking of Bobby Valentine, he was a character. He was. I'll tell you, Jack. He was, even though he had problems with Boston, he was a good manager. I remember him getting kicked out of the game and him coming back with the disguise on, sitting in the dugout, which was probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen a manager do.
Is he the athletic director, Mac, at one of the colleges by you? I think he's an athletic director.
Well, I know he owns a restaurant close to me called Bobby V's, where I've seen him a couple times, and he's doing well. It's right up here by the airport where I live, and he's doing very well there. So
NBA, we got to talk.
Go ahead.
Mike D'Antoni, he's an assistant coach with the Nets now.
Right.
He's going to a high position. He decided at the end he didn't want to coach the Rockets. They weren't sure whether they wanted to retain him or not, but he was under the impression he would be able to nab another NBA job. But the NBA coaching jobs closed up on them, and D'Antoni and the new coach Steve Nash were very close at Phoenix.
Sure.
You know, when D'Antoni coached there, Steve Nash was a star player. So he'll be a big asset to the Nets, a very big asset, along with Amari Stoudemire, who's on that crew. And, so the Nets, they're primed to make a run at it. The Houston Rockets,
right?
They saw their new head coach is Stefan Silas, who's the son of Paul Silas, an outstanding NBA player and coach as well. The question is, he's a rookie. He's going to be a rookie head coach. He was an assistant coach with the Dallas Mavericks. Whether the veteran players, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, are going to take to a young guy who's never been a head coach in the NBA before, that's going to be interesting to see. Because when you're a veteran player, a star veteran player, and there's a young rookie head coach, you don't necessarily look up to him, the way you would a veteran coach who's been around.
Right, definitely. And coming up in a couple minutes here, we have scheduled on Anthony Cervino, our fantasy football expert. And we'll get into some of the best plays, and we'll get into 3 matchups, big matchups. I like to do that with Anthony every week when he comes on. So that kind of ties up the loose ends, unless you got something else, Jack. I mean, go ahead if you do.
One quick thing, touching scene yesterday. We don't talk about the UFC, and I'm not the biggest UFC fan. I have something against Dana White. Dana White doesn't know who I am even. But I have something a little personal against him. When the UFC wanted to did business once with the Boxing Writers Association of America. It's petty stuff. I'm not even going to repeat what it is. But Uriah Grant beat Anderson Silva yesterday in a big UFC match. And Anderson Silva is Uriah Hall. Did I say Grant? Uriah Hall beat Anderson Silva. Uriah Hall's idol is Anderson Silva. So he beat his idol. And to see them share that moment, hugging and crying after the match, I mean, that's what sportsmanship is all about. I mean, I hate to see when one opponent beats the other, that's taunting or this or that. Because when 2 guys are meeting in the ring, be it UFC, boxing, or whatever, they should have a lifetime bond.
Sure.
Even, you play football against the guy. There's a bond that you could share years later. You meet him in the bar, you talk about when you played with one another. And it was a nice, touching moment that I enjoyed.
Oh, I definitely agree with that, Jack. I mean, I don't care. When you get in between the sidelines on a football game or within the ropes or a cage or wherever you're going, then it's all business. You're out there to win. You're out there to do your best you can, and you're out there to win whatever you're trying to win, whatever sport it is. But after the game and after the match, I mean, listen. We have you're all in the same thing. You're all in the same field, and you're all trying to make a living and trying to get by. I think it's the same thing in sports broadcasting. I mean, you have your rivals, whether it's ESPN versus The Fan versus CBS Sports, different shows like we have, different. We try to share our show and their shows, and we try to get along because we're all in the same boat, really, Jack. I mean, we are competing against each other, but when you come down to it, it's good to watch, everybody do well. And speaking of that, coming up, folks, we have coming right away. We have a fantasy football expert from Fantasy Football Faceoff, and one of my favorite guests to break down the top 3 games, Anthony Cervino. So let's bring him on. How you doing?
What's going on, guys?
Hey, Anthony.
Okay, Anthony. So we'll get into a little bit about what your show is about and what you're probably one of the best experts in the fantasy area. Real quick, and we just want to look at the top plays or the top players you have that would be going into Sunday's games, Anthony.
Okay, some of my top guys going into Week 8. The Falcons game on Thursday night, if you watched that was really good. Julio Jones seems to be, he's a player who you want to trade for if you're a fantasy football manager. He's going in the right direction now that he's healthy. I think he's going to have a big year for the rest of the way. Running backs this week, Derrick Henry going against Cincinnati. He should be in all lineups. I don't even know if that's a discussion. One that I'm worried about is Ezekiel Elliott from the Cowboys. He has not played really well since Dak Prescott went down.
Right.
Normally, he destroys Washington, and he barely had 52 total yards. And normally, he kills Philadelphia. I don't even know if you should use him if you're a fantasy manager. Like, if you have a better player on the bench, I would put him in over Ezekiel Elliott. And I'm not saying to bench Ezekiel Elliott for Adrian Peterson, but there are players out there like a Myles Gaskin. I would even consider a Tevin Coleman coming off of injured reserve, Leonard Fournette in over Zeke this week. I'm really worried about him.
Real quick question on that, Anthony. Do you think it's because Dak is hurt, or you think it's more because the offensive line is all banged up and there's a lot of second string players out there, blocking for him?
There are third and fourth string players. Let's go there. The biggest issue this year, with and without Dak Prescott, the offensive line injuries and the defense, and no matter what quarterback you put under center for Dallas, they're going to struggle until the defense improves and guys begin to get healthy and the offensive line improves. Like, I know they activated Joe Looney, who's going to be the starting center or guard. So maybe they get healthy and they become more of a competent team, but it looks like the players, they gave up on Mike Nolan and Mike McCarthy. They don't want to play for these guys.
Yeah.
Does the trade deadline have a major effect this week on fantasy selections? For example, someone like a John Ross, the Bengals wide receiver who hasn't been playing, could he be considered a steal this week because the Bengals, maybe they're going to want to play him so he could be better trade bait?
No, I think the league knows what a guy like John Ross is already. There's a reason why John Ross has not been active this year, and he's a former first-round pick. He never caught on. And I think there could be a team out there, maybe like the Patriots, and they need wide receiver help. Maybe they think, okay, he's a former first-round pick. Maybe we give a fifth for him because he hasn't been on the field a lot, and we try to get what we can out of him. And for fantasy, you see what he does first in the new place before you pick him up.
Right. So how are we looking at we talked about Zeke. How about on the wide receiver front, Anthony? What plays you see there?
A wide receiver that I really like this week, a guy like Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. He's had a couple of 100-yard receiving games in his past 4 games. I think 3 out of his past 4. He's really starting to come on, and this is a Vikings team where their defense is decimated by injury. They're going to get the Packers, who are red hot. I expect a lot of points for Green Bay, and if Minnesota is trailing, Justin Jefferson is going to get some shots over the top to score some points. So I like Justin Jefferson a lot this week.
Definitely agree with that. On defenses, with the matchups, we got the Ravens, the Steelers, which are 2 very they're good defenses. Buffalo going up against, the Patriots with their defense and the Patriots' woes on offense. Who do you think would be the best play for that, Anthony?
For the defense, Kansas City.
Okay.
They are my top fantasy defense this week. They're playing the Jets, and the Jets, I don't even know what wide receivers they're putting on the field. Brashad Perriman is out. Crowder's probably not going to play. I think they're left with Denzel Mims in his second career game and Jeff Smith and Braxton Berrios. I love Kansas City. I think that defense itself, like if you're betting, I would consider putting a 2-touchdown prop down on the Kansas City defense to score 2 touchdowns.
Wow. That's a heck of a point. I didn't even think about them playing the Jets.
And the team they beat in the Super Bowl, Jimmy Garoppolo, the word is he's a late fantasy pickup this week. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you could pick up Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's because he's playing the Seattle Seahawks. Their defense is terrible. They're giving up. They're in the top 3 in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks and wide receivers. So Jimmy Garoppolo, even without Deebo Samuel, I think the rookie Brandon Ayuk's going to have a big game. They have George Kittle, and they have weapons all over the field. Jimmy's going to be a decent quarterback this week. I would say a back-end quarterback 1 tier, but he's not a top 5 guy.
Okay, so let's go to the big 3 games that I got, Anthony. We'll break them down. The Dolphins, of course, a lot of people are surprised that they've gotten so competitive so quick. A lot of people thought, they were still another a year away, but it's almost halfway through the season. They're in the thick of the battle for the AFC East with Buffalo faltering a little bit and the problems in New England. They're starting Tua against a solid Rams team. I mean, their defense played really well against Chicago, and the Rams are resurging. So, what are your thoughts on Miami's possibilities beating, going and beating the Rams, or vice versa?
I like the Rams in this game, and it's really because of Tua. If Ryan Fitzpatrick was still the quarterback, maybe my mind would change, and I would pick Miami because they have a really good defense. They're just as good as the Rams. Their offenses are really similar too. Everybody's healthy on both sides, but the difference is we know Jared Goff and we don't know Tua. And in a game like this, sure, we can bet off of or bank on what Tua did in college, but we don't know what he's going to do as a pro.
So you're saying Miami at 3-3, who's still in contention for the AFC East title, a wild card berth, so on. You're questioning whether Tua should be starting yet, whether they should have continued to stay with Fitzpatrick at least a bit longer. Is that what you're saying?
I would have stayed with Fitzpatrick, but I also understand the logic of going for Tua. Like, we know Ryan Fitzpatrick's ceiling. We saw it a couple of years ago with the Jets when, 10-6, they missed the playoffs. I think that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Where Tua, we don't know anything about him, but we believe he is a championship-winning quarterback because of what he did in college. Mm-hmm. So I get the logic in terms of we know what we're going to get from Ryan Fitzpatrick, but at the same time, you also know where you can go with Fitzpatrick in terms of regular season wins in a very winnable AFC East.
But do you want to be welcomed to the NFL by Aaron Donald?
No.
That's what I was just going to go with. Do you think there's concerns, Anthony, on – I mean, deep in their minds of the coaches of putting him up against a defensive line like the Rams? We're not sure. I mean, he looks healthy. He looks great in practice. But when he gets that first hit, and he may get hit a lot against the Rams, do you think they're worried that maybe that injury is going to come back and haunt them?
I think we'll know how worried they are if the trade deadline passes and Ryan Fitzpatrick is still there.
Good point. Very good point.
Like, if because there are teams out there who, people want to bring up Dallas. I don't want anything to do with Ryan Fitzpatrick because the issue with Dallas is the line. But, there are teams like Jacksonville out there. Gardner Minshew is going to miss who knows how much time. He just had surgery on one of his hands. They could go trade for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe New England has done with Cam Newton. They could trade for Ryan Fitzpatrick. But if Miami holds on to him, that tells me, hey, we don't know if this kid can stay healthy, but if they move them, then they're going to trust the doctors and what Tua is telling them.
To me, the biggest storyline as far as a quarterback goes in the NFL this week, believe it or not, is Lamar Jackson. I know he's an MVP, had a great year last year. He's been, for the most part, fine this year. He's been on cruise control this year, basically. This is the best defense that he's going against in his career against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got an outstanding front seven. They're going to be blitzing him. And if he can't get away from the blitz, I mean, if he has a horrendous game, you have to question how much of an elite quarterback Lamar Jackson really is. And I know it's only one game, and to talk that way about a running MVP might not be right, but I really think this is the biggest test of his career today.
It is not just one game, and I'm happy you're saying all this because a couple of weeks ago, I was saying the same thing going into that Kansas City game. Lamar Jackson is now 0-3 against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Lamar Jackson has never won a playoff game. Lamar Jackson's biggest win in the regular season, I believe, was last year at home against the San Francisco 49ers in the rain, and they barely won that game. Yeah, he's the reigning MVP. But that's the regular season. And, that's a lot about, what the fans think and the big time numbers. And we've never seen a quarterback do it Lamar Jackson's way before.
Right.
But in terms of a big game quarterback, I have a ton of questions about Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And this is just going to be another test in his career because last year, you beat Pittsburgh with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. Right. Now you got Big Ben and all the specialists, all the skill position players, they're all healthy. The defense is in its now second year of being dominant again. This is a big, big test. And I believe the last time I checked the spread, the Ravens are giving 4. That's way too much.
Yeah, I agree with that. In fact, in my top 3 picks that I do on Twitter, I took those points. I mean, if the Ravens do beat them, it ain't going to be by 4. So staying with that game, breaking it down, Anthony, I see the Ravens maybe having a better defense, maybe, than the Steelers. But I think the Steelers definitely have the edge on offense. I think they're more complete offense. They're a better passing team. Their running game is just as good. Of course, Lamar Jackson is the wild card. If he does really have a big game, then maybe the Ravens win. But it's going to be a very physical game. It always is. And don't you think? I mean, would you agree that at the very least the Steelers definitely have the edge on offense?
It's close. I think it's because they have a different style offense. What I really love about Pittsburgh's offense, and they kind of tipped their cap to this last year when Big Ben went down, they went out and traded Minkah Fitzpatrick. Instead of getting a quarterback and the way that they were playing football, they were running the ball, no matter what running back, whether it was Connor or Snell or Jalen Samuels, they continued to run the football and let that defense really come together and gel and carry the team. And they were in the wild card hunt going into that Jets game. The Jets beat them and knocked them out at the end of the regular season. But that was with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. Right. And that told me, because in fantasy, everybody thought they have all these receivers. Big Ben's going to throw it 800 times like he did 2 years ago to Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. And to me, they were going to go back because if you remember Ben Roethlisberger earlier in his career when they were winning Super Bowl, he wasn't a throwing quarterback. That was a defensive team and a running team, and then they let Big Ben play when he had to. This is what Pittsburgh is doing. I don't know if Big Ben is in the top 16 in attempts.
Right.
So I love what Pittsburgh's doing.
I think there's an X factor during the regular season that you don't have during the playoffs. Pittsburgh had a massively huge game against Tennessee last week. A lot of nervous energy goes into that game. They won that game. How do you crank it up and get motivated so soon after? Baltimore is priming for Pittsburgh. I mean, this is their big game. Pittsburgh has to crank it up 2 games in a row. That might be a little bit of an X factor is going to favor the Ravens today.
Yeah, I think these two teams, historically, they get up to play each other. But, like you said about last week against the Titans, that's either going to be momentum or they're going to come into this game flat.
Yeah.
Well, I think that late surge by the Titans, who almost came back and tied that game, made Pittsburgh maybe come down to earth a little bit and say, hey, maybe we're not as great as we think we are. Because I'll tell you right now, Anthony, that was close at the end. They came back and they almost won that game against Pittsburgh. And of course, I know the Titans are one of the best teams in the league. Anyway.
And we talk about Big Ben. They've surrounded Big Ben with a lot of weapons. He doesn't look to be nearly the quarterback he was years ago. I mean, that's just my perception.
He's not.
No,
he's not. He's up there in age. He's better than Phillip Rivers. Like Rivers is showing his age. Eli showed his age his last 2 years. But Big Ben can still at least play because they have a lot of talent around him.
Right. A year ago, you would have been saying Tom Brady's showing his age.
Not me. I've always been a Brady guy.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So
I didn't blame last year on Brady. That was no weapons from Brady. Brady had nothing in New England. Yeah. And Cam has even less.
That's very true. So the last game I want to cover with you, Anthony, is a big NFC West game. The 49ers versus the Seahawks. Again, two legitimate contenders from the NFC West, two physical teams. At least they will be physical today, I can guarantee you that. Wilson probably has an advantage at quarterback, 49ers, a little edge in the running game, and, of course, on defense. Who do you like in that game?
This is close. I've gone back and forth because I think Seattle is a team I want to pick, but the past 2 weeks, I've been taking the 49ers money line. I just didn't think the 49ers, when they were coming off that game against the Dolphins and they got blown out and embarrassed, you know, if you really looked at it, Jimmy Garoppolo was not healthy. He didn't practice enough coming off the injury anyway. Debo was only in his second game back. That was a banged-up 49ers team that should not have been playing their quarterback. And then I loved them against the Rams in New England, and I'm kind of having that same premonition feeling today to where the defense of the 49ers, they're actually playing well despite losing Bosa and I forgot who else they lost, another pass rusher earlier in the year. They're starting to play better. And Seattle, we saw them lose to a division rival last year. And if that Cardinals defense can contain Russell Wilson a little bit, maybe the 49ers play a little bit better and win a close one, because we do know the Seattle defense can't stop anybody.
Yeah.
Well, they have a couple of injuries, notably to Jamal Adams, the Seahawks. Has Jamal Adams been the player that the Seahawks thought they were getting? And moving forward, is he going to get the big contract and be an anchor to the Seahawks defense in the future?
Jamal Adams has not been on the field long enough to answer that question, but I believe Jamal Adams is the best safety in the league. And when he gets back on the field and gets comfortable, I think he's going to really help that defense. But right now, they've been weathering the storm the best they can without him. But even when he did play in week 1 and 2, they were in a better defense. What Jamal Adams adds is a playmaker who can go get you a turnover or a sack.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very aggressive player, that's for sure. And you know, I think what he did with the Jets was awful. With the Jets, how they responded was maybe kind of weak. I still like Seattle, Anthony. I think Wilson will find a way to get it done. He always does find a way to get it done. And if you remember the Cardinals, if they didn't miss that field goal, it might have been. If Seattle didn't miss that field goal, it might have been a different story. I just think Russell Wilson is an unbelievable quarterback, maybe the MVP this year. So those are the three big matchups. Is there any other insights to any other games that you like that if you were a betting man that you might take a look at?
The Jets were 20, Anthony. If I get a phone call and they offer me 20 points, I'm a Jet fan. Do I take the Jets with 20?
I wouldn't touch that game.
Neither.
I think I like the over in the Browns Raiders game. A lot of people are worried about the weather, but to me, it's like these professionals know how to play in bad weather. It was like last year when Aaron Rodgers was going to New York and it was snowing.
Sure.
Against the Giants, and he threw 4 or 5 touchdowns, and people in fantasy were like, "Get away from Aaron Rodgers." I'm like, "No, he's fine. He plays in Green Bay."
Right, exactly.
I think the over's been dropping to where I want to take it even more. I think it's right around 50.5 points right now. I love the over in that game. Both defenses are terrible, and both of those offenses are playing really, really well right now.
That's a great point, Anthony. Great point. So that's our 20 minutes with Anthony Cervino today. Again, great job, Anthony. We love having you. show.
Thank you.
Everybody go and see Fantasy Football Faceoff. It's an incredible site. They do a lot of good work down there, and check out his show down there. And again, Anthony, have a great Sunday. Enjoy the games, my friend.
Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Thank you, Anthony.
So there you go,
Good stuff.
Jack. Yes, sir. I love having him on because, again,
Yep.
he's not just a fantasy man. That man knows a little bit about sports. So what we're going to do, Jack, we're going to go ahead and take our quick break here today, our 7th inning stretch on our football Sunday. I love it.
You give a football term.
We got to do like
Say the
2
end of
minute
the quarter,
warning,
something.
halftime.
Stretch
Yeah,
football talk. Come on,
yes,
man.
oh, God.
Get a little creative.
Who's producing this show, Jack, for God's
You
sake?
are. That's why I'm complaining to you.
Thanks for throwing me under the bus, Jack.
Yeah.
I got to blame somebody. But anyway, so I blame myself. Hey, anyway, so we'll be back in about 3.5 minutes, folks. Stick with us. We got Robert Butler from Sports Skope due up next to come in and talk a little bit about different things, big stories in the NFL. And so we'll be right back up, folks. Stick with us.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics in the South of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information on talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed.
Yeah. Oh, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Picked off the team. Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer a couple of months ago.
Really?
Yeah. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Not really. A lot of kids this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect him to do, he didn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, where we bring you all the local professional sports and headlines. And we have our big guest lined up today. We just had on Anthony Cervino from Fantasy Football, Faceoff over on his site. And now we're going to have a special guest coming up, Robert Butler. Sorry, Robert. He's backstage right now. I can't hear him, but he can hear us. And we're going to bring him on. He's the podcast host of Sports Skope, very knowledgeable about football and other sports. He has a great show over there at Sports Skope. Check him out. And here comes Robert. Thanks for coming on, guys. Robert.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Hey, Robert, we got a few big stories in the NFL this week. Few I want to touch on you, get your opinion on. First, we had Byron Williams on a couple of days ago, our NFL analyst. He's out of Texas.
Okay.
And he said that the talk in Texas all week was that hit that was put on Dalton, and not one Dallas Cowboy got up in the guy's face and not necessarily retaliated and hit him, but even stood up for his quarterback, Andy Dalton. And what are your thoughts? Do you think that it's something that players should be at least getting somebody's face when they do a cheap shot like that, or do you think it's better to let the officials handle that?
Well, I mean, the way players are getting suspended for everything, thrown out of games, fined, I mean, I can understand them kind of pulling back a little bit with that. Dalton, it's his first year there. He really hasn't developed those kind of relationships. I mean, that's the way I see it. I know that's got a lot of talk this week about people getting in. I mean, I noticed the guy didn't Boston get fined about $25,000 for that?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't see that particular play as that big a deal, jumping on people. I mean, we saw what happened with Pittsburgh last year when things really get out of hand with the Cleveland game. And I think players are kind of looking at, well, we're losing money for everything else. We might not want to get too crazy here.
Yeah, well, I mean, being a former football player and coach, and the players that we've had on, and you hear them outspoken, don't you think there's something to standing up for your teammate and in football especially, Robert? It's almost like a family on the field. I mean, if somebody came up and hit your brother when he wasn't looking or something like that, when you jump in on that?
Yeah, maybe some of the offensive linemen probably should have jumped on the guy. I just didn't see that as such a big deal. The guy looked like he was didn't whatchamacallit slide forward Dalton in that.
Well, he did.
Let me tell you what the problem was with that play. The Cowboys have been awful this year. They're 2-5. They've been non-competitive in some of those games. If the Cowboys were 5-2 and playing well, and the same hit took place, no one would be saying anything that they're not standing up for their quarterback. It was just another play. Was it flagrant or not? Borderline. I mean, I've seen a lot worse. That's just my perception of that.
Well, again, being a former player and coach, as a player, I definitely would have jumped in the guy's face. And as a coach, I sure wouldn't have got mad if at least one of my offensive linemen went ahead and took a stance. And to me, guys, if they're not doing that, that team is not together. They're not playing as one unit, and they're not. They're not. That's part of being competitive. It's part of looking out for each other and stuff like that. But that's just my opinion. So,
yeah,
they'll be fighting tonight with the Cowboys. They've heard the word. Them and
they will be.
I think are going to go down.
I definitely think that the Philadelphia-Dallas fight is going to be very very contentious tonight. I really do believe
and
that.
It could be an issue where the players are really checked out, like you said. I mean, Dallas they're really bad this year. They don't buy into this. A lot of them not buying in McCartney. I know there's been leaking about the defensive coordinator. There's dysfunction there, and quite frankly, I saw the all or nothing thing. I don't know if you guys watched that on Amazon Prime. It's a little bit of a country club like atmosphere there in Dallas anyways. And this was when they were doing well. So it's
Well, what do you mean by a country club type?
well,
atmosphere?
there's just not a lot of hollering and stuff. It's just a lot of easy going. You know, you hear Jason Garrett drop the F-bomb, but it feels like he's playing that up, like he's acting like he's outraged, but he's not really outraged. And it's just a lot of pats on the back and stuff. It's almost it's very non-Bill Parcells like, or Bill Belichick like, where it's completely opposite in some ways. But it's just, you know, everything's going to be okay. A lot of it's almost too cold, too comfortable there.
Who sets the tone for the team? I mean, does Jerry Jones leave the coaches alone, or does he really very much get involved? Because knowing Jerry Jones's personality, he's boiling right now, absolutely boiling. Yep. This is unacceptable. And I'm not talking about just wins and losses, but the attitude. I mean, is he going to step in now and change the culture? This week is indications are that he's already done it by, you know, getting rid of a couple of players.
Yeah.
All right. The talk of New York is that dinner party where Daniel Jones took out the offensive line to dinner in public without masks. Gardner Hernandez won't play because of testing positive. The rest of the offensive line still, I think, is a question mark. It looks like they will play. What's your thoughts about, you know, going out in public with your offensive line, not wearing masks? Do you think it's a big deal, or do you think this is something that the NFL should take action on?
Well, I'll tell you what. Here, I work in the medical industry here in Nashville, and if you don't walk into an establishment without that mask on, you're read the riot act. You're asked to leave. And in some of these hospitals, the ones I go to, Vanderbilt Hospital, they will have you arrested. It's so serious now. And quite frankly, I didn't like it, but I've gotten used to it. It's like putting on it's like a dress code. If you walk into like a nice restaurant, if you don't have that jacket, you can't sit here. It's very much, you got to have the mask on. When I asked him, you were telling you. So yeah, he's got to be responsible. And plus with that mayor up there, there's no telling. The NFL probably should, because of the local laws, particularly those cities like New York and whatnot. The NFL just doesn't want to, they want to save face. So, yes, it is a big deal.
You know, Mac, I had a hard time not laughing now. You don't realize how you set me off with that question. Think of it. Daniel Jones took the offensive line out to dinner. Now, in the past, quarterbacks would take the offensive line out to dinner as a reward for good performance, maybe buy him a watch. They're 1-6. He's been under constant pressure.
Yes, sir.
Take him out for dinner. I wouldn't want to see those guys. You know? Those guys are getting rewarded for him getting knocked on his butt, him having to run all over the place. It's
a funny point. Now, what I'm getting at with the mask, guys, and this is what I'm talking about. All right, during the game, the players don't wear masks, even on the sidelines. The coaches wear masks, the refs wear masks, but the players don't. Now, the players, I don't think, are quarantined to the building. I think they're still eligible to go home. So if these players catch the virus from somebody outside the team and that, they're going to bring it into the stadium anyway. They're going to affect the other players. So isn't that kind of a foolish, I don't want to say a conception, but isn't it kind of hypocritical? I mean, here they don't wear masks during when they're hitting each other, when they're on a sideline all together, and yet when they go out in public, isn't the odds almost the same that they'll catch the virus?
Well, was it Ricardo Allen from Atlanta? It was like a Saturday, and the safety from Atlanta, and he was pulled from the game because he tested positive for COVID-19. From my understanding, from watching Hard Knocks this year and going up until today, living out of Nashville, we had some issues here as well with the Titans. These guys are tested constantly. I think they're tested before they come to the games. I think they're tested on Saturday. They're tested before walkthroughs. I mean, they're tested like nobody's business. It's just like sitting down, brushing your teeth. Okay, brush your teeth. Okay, now you get your COVID test. So that I can understand the reason why that they don't really need to wear the mask since they've already been tested, maybe before kickoff in some cases.
What I don't understand is, how does a guy get pulled from the game with all the testing and how sophisticated it is? Wouldn't they know before the game to break the news to the guy during the game? Imagine the guy's in the huddle and they send someone else in and tell him you tested positive for COVID. Come out. Come on.
Somebody's dropped the ball there in the organization. You know, I was looking at, and you're right about Daniel Jones. Maybe he took him out because he wants somebody vouching for him behind his back to the staff. He is dead last in just about every statistic. I was looking at some of the, because I sent you that text. We was going to talk about this Daniel Jones. He's 28 in touchdowns. They're tied for 26 in yards. They're second to last in total offense, and last place, unfortunately, my friends, is the Jets. And quite frankly, you know, he played most of last season. You're starting to get to that point where there's probably conversations behind closed doors about the future of Daniel Jones. And I'm going to tell you right now, if a guy like Trevor Lawrence is on the board, you take him. And then you try to get rid of Daniel Jones. That's my opinion. We talked about that last week with Josh Rosen. Hey, you get it right. You know, quite frankly, I would move off Gettleman. I know we talked about that before. You know, you guys might not be on the same boat there. But when you're starting to sign people, then you trade them away. It sounds like he's making it up as he goes along. Maybe he can't handle this New York pressure compared to a market like a Charlotte. So, quite frankly, I just clean house there at the end of the season. If you're a Giants fan, you hope they lose the rest of the game. You get a new general manager, and quite frankly, I'd get a new coach. You hiring a special.
Get rid of Joe Judge, you're saying?
Well, he's a special. He's never even been a coordinator.
Yeah, that's a little harsh to get rid of Joe Judge. They've been, unlike the Jets here, the Giants have been competitive, and for their losses, they could have won the games. The Jets haven't been competitive. Sam Darnold's he's in his third year as the Jet quarterback. Daniel Jones is in his second. And you want to get rid of Daniel Jones ahead of Sam Darnold?
Well, Sam Darnold, quite frankly, they have no offensive. There's a major issue there with that general manager prior to Joe Douglas. So you can make the argument about moving parts there. No, quite frankly, if you can get one of these top guys, I would trade either one of those quarterbacks. Even Darnold, you probably could get more from Darnold because he was considered a higher prospect than a Daniel Jones by more NFL clubs. You probably could get a second round for him.
You say that, Robert, and Daniel Jones broke a lot of rookie records last year, playing quarterback, yards, touchdowns, stuff like that in games. And I don't think that Daniel Jones is playing his best, but you can, and not as an excuse, you can point to a brand new offensive system, offensive line that hasn't even come close to gelling yet, because not only the Giants can't pass too well, they can't run too well either. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that, you know, there has to be some kind of improvement. But you got to understand that even the Sam Darnold, there has been a lot of changes in their young careers, and a lot of young quarterbacks that have potential end up falling to that trap where, you know, the team is not a good team and they keep rehiring head coaches and rehiring offensive coordinators, changing systems, and now you're asking them to start all over again. I think a lot of times the process hurts the young quarterbacks more than young quarterbacks not being talented enough to play. You know what I'm saying?
You make me think of Dwayne Haskins. Okay, he could be a perfect example. Can he be a quality NFL quarterback or not? We don't know. But why not have a team pick up a Dwayne Haskins now? They could get him probably fairly cheap. Listen, Josh Rosen, Arizona traded up a little to get him in the draft, and a couple of years later, he's on the Tampa Bay Buccaneer practice squad. Yeah. And someone like Troy Aikman, who knows a lot about quarterbacking than any of us here. I know nothing about quarterbacking, quite frankly, but he said Josh Rosen hasn't even touched the surface on what he can accomplish going forward. He thinks Josh Rosen can be an outstanding NFL quarterback still. And if Troy Aikman thinks that, why not pick him up someone? I mean, what's he doing on a practice squad with Tampa Bay where he's doesn't have a prayer playing?
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, well, he's backing up a 43-year-old quarterback. I mean, Brady's not going to play till he's 60. I know he looks good right now. Remind you guys, I want to say Vince Young. I'm out of Nashville. I want to say he either won Rookie of the Year or he was a candidate for Rookie of the Year, and he was a complete disaster after that. Could not handle this pressure. Only time I've ever seen that really, and you guys are a little older than me, you probably maybe have a little bit more of an understanding that a quarterback was traded away and he actually worked with another organization was probably Brett Favre. He was a second-round pick to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out there. Now, that did work out. I want to say maybe a Rich Gannon, but rarely is a quarterback that people make their mind up on because, you know, these coaching staff, they see these guys day in and day out. And Dwayne Haskins, by the way, I read this morning, he's up on the trading block. They're taking offers for him. So
the Steelers cut Johnny Unitas. I mean, they do stuff. They make certain value judgments, so on. And I think the NFL's not like it was years ago with a quarterback where they have patience, let him play. As soon as they start showing patience and let someone play it out like a Daniel Jones, you might be right. Maybe he's not going to cut it with the Giants. Maybe they overestimated his potential. But patience isn't a thing in the NFL anymore with the quarterback position. They'll have more patience with other positions, but not a quarterback.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true, Jack. And just before we get on to the next subject, Robert, the great Jim Plunkett, Rookie of the Year Patriots, traded, and he ended up with the Raiders and won 2 Super Bowls. So, I mean, there is, people make judgments and based off their own assessments. And, we do have coaches in there that sometimes
Doug Flutie,
another one. Okay, it looks like Cam Newton is reverting back to where he was when the Panthers let him go. The mechanics don't look good. He's holding on to the ball too long. He's kind of underthrown open receivers when they are open, which is not that often. Does this look like a big mistake? Not signing him, Robert, but making him the first-string quarterback and not giving the kid Settlement a chance, which is where they were going to go originally. That's what the talk was until they signed Cam Newton. The Patriots starting line is banged up. They have no running game to speak of, really, besides Cam, who really doesn't look like Cam after he got the virus. So what do you think the Patriots do, Robert? Do they end up giving him one more game, let him play out the season, or bring Settlement in and give him a shot?
I think they're going to let him play a few more games. He's benched the other day for the 49ers, and the timing on the signing of Cam Newton was the same day that some news about Robert Kraft and this massage parlor gate came into fruition. There was something about was going to trial, later got dismissed. The timing was really suspicious. I remember thinking and reading about, is this a Kraft move to kind of knock off his personal embarrassment off the headlines and the trending news cycle and go ahead and bring in Cam Newton? He had been on the market all summer and he didn't have a training camp. But that being said, Jason Whitlock made a good point about Cam Newton, saying he's a little too Hollywood. He's a little too into his other brands for the position. He is post 30. Maybe it's one of those can't teach a guy, an older player, new tricks. And he might not gel well with a Bill Belichick. Of course, now I think Bill Belichick has got to step back a little bit from drafting and let his staff help him out. He's not done a good job drafting skill players. Going back to Rob Gronkowski was his last Pro Bowler 10 years ago. So they've got a tough decision to make there with Cam Newton. My thing is maybe give him a few more spots there to start. And odds are they're probably going to move off Cam Newton. And quite frankly, my original assessment was they were just going to lose a lot of games. They got a lot of dead cap, Tom Brady dead cap, Antonio Brown dead cap money. They're getting all that off the books this year. They had all those players opt out and maybe get a chance to get one of those 3 quarterbacks that I keep hearing. Justin Fields, obviously Lawrence, and there's a guy named Trey I can't remember his name. It's like from like South Dakota State. He's getting a lot of publicity. One of those three possibly could fall to and start over and kind of mold them in the air quote Patriot way. Not so sure about Stidham. I wasn't high on him in Auburn.
Yeah. Well, you know what no one talks about, and they've kept it in-house New England, is what exactly is the relationship right now between Belichick and Robert Kraft, okay? Because Tom Brady was like a son to Robert Kraft, and he hated to let Brady go, but, you know, he had no choice, and that was a Belichick move. Kraft never wanted to see Brady leave, and the plan in place with Bill Belichick obviously didn't work, letting Brady go. So I kind of wonder what the relationship is, but Bill Belichick has had such enormous success at New England. I can't imagine Robert Kraft wanting or willing to move on from Belichick.
Yeah, I couldn't see that either. I remember the issue was they wanted to, from what I understand, he wanted to keep Garoppolo and move off Brady a few years ago.
Right.
And that never come to fruition, obviously, because the owner stepped in, Robert Kraft. So maybe there's some still a little bit of resentfulness, but you know, I'm still thinking that Belichick still wants to show that he can win without Brady. He's such a competitor.
Do you think, Robert, real quick before we let you go, do you think that the Patriots make a trade to either get a wide receiver, tight end, or maybe another quarterback that might be able to improve them for the second half? They're definitely not out of the chase right now with Buffalo losing the last two games. This is a huge game for them, of course. If they do by chance beat Buffalo, they're still in the hunt at this time. Do you see them maybe trading? I mean, it's talked that Gilmore might be on the trading blocks, the defensive back. Do they trade him to try to either get a weapon, a wide receiver, tight end, or do they maybe even see if they can get their hands on one of the quarterbacks that may be on the trading block? Maybe they make a move for a Stafford, even though he said he wanted to be in Detroit, or one of quarterbacks like that, offering Gilmore and for him straight up. Do you see anything like that?
No, I don't. I just don't see. But I think Belichick is wanting to go the other way, and not unless his hand is forced. That would be an interesting thought, though. I've never thought about what if they beat Buffalo. Gilmore's not going to play today. I figured they're going to try to trade Gilmore. Down here, we need help at corner here in Tennessee. Pittsburgh, I thought Tennessee would knock out Pittsburgh. That wasn't the case, but Tennessee could use help at cornerback. There's a lot of relationships here. I don't see Belichick doing it. He made the comment the other day, Belichick did, was very rare, that the reason why we can't add depth is because of our cap issue.
Right.
Everyone has a cap issue, so I couldn't understand that. It's like the guy who's poor complaining to other people who are poor. I can't do anything. I have no money. So welcome to my life.
Well, he's made so many bad mistakes that it's starting to come up on their dead cap money.
Yeah.
Like I said, they owe like $10 million from that Antonio Brown deal. What did he play, like 2 games?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm surprised they owe him anything. Because the reason why they let him go, of course, is he started texting a woman who had him up on charges. So anyway, Robert, it's been a pleasure having you on again. We love to hear your insight. We don't always agree with you, and that's why I like having you on.
So interesting, right?
Yeah, that's why I like having you on. You can't just be one-sided because there are a lot more views and opinions out there. Folks, go tune into Sports Skope. Robert hosts that podcast out there. He does a lot of football and he does a lot of other sports. It's very entertaining, a very informative show. And again, Robert, thank you for coming in this week, and hopefully we see you next week.
Hey, enjoy the games, guys.
Definitely will. Have a good one, Robert.
Good week.
So there you go. Robert Butler with Sports Scope comes in, and again, he told some things that a lot of fans up here don't want to hear.
We have the best football Sunday morning show anywhere.
I think so, because I mean,
we sprinkle stuff in, boxing, UFC, basketball, in between the football. And
excellent.
then when we run out of things to say, we think of a couple of more games coming up. We got the best Sunday morning show.
I think you're right, Jack. I really think you're right. I think, but it's important. I think, we could have people on here that agree with us all the time or say things that we want to hear. But, that's not the way of the world, man. There are a lot of people with different
Moving
views.
on from Daniel Jones, I mean,
that was very
down the gauntlet.
Yeah, that was very
some
surprising.
people aren't thrilled with Daniel Jones, but to say point blank, it's time to move on from Daniel Jones. I mean, that's a little harsh.
It sure is.
Saquon Barkley a couple of days ago, he's had, knee surgery. But
right.
Think of the great weapon he would be for Daniel Jones and the Giants, and he's out. So I don't want to hear about other teams' injuries, but the Giants are held accountable.
Right.
Saquon Barkley, he'll be back next year.
The New York market is very tough, Jack. They want to win, and they want to win now, and they don't care what the reasons are. You're losing, and I'm not talking about
Mac, against the Eagles. Daniel Jones threw that perfect pass late in the game to Evan Ingram. Then Evan Ingram holds on to the darn ball. The Giants win. And what are we talking about? How poised Daniel Jones was and leading the Giants to a victory.
Right.
We're praising Daniel Jones, but because Evan Ingram drops the ball, now it's Daniel Jones isn't developing. It's such a thin line between winning and losing.
And that's every game. But remember, Jack, that happens in every game now and then. The good teams find a way to win no matter the mistakes, no matter the penalties, no matter anything. The good teams know how to win those close games. And once the Giants become good, which you're not right now, and, even though, we both are New York, local fans, New York Giant fans and all that, Jet fans, we understand that, this is what's the difference between a good team and a team that's, okay, or going through rebuilding. They don't know how to win and close out games when they should. And
it's a little bit of how they lose, Mac, too.
It's true. It's true.
Jets haven't been competitive this year. Okay?
It's true.
The Jets' losses have been decisive, and it hasn't been pleasant to watch. The Giants, for their losses and their 1-6 record, they had a shot of winning those games.
Right.
They played hard till the end.
Right.
If they keep playing hard, under the first-year coach Joe Judge, that's fine, for this year, because then they're close to turning the corner.
Right. I mean, you can tell a difference between the teams and who in the locker room, who has lost the locker room, which I think Adam Gase has, and who still has the players believing in some kind of system. And, Jack, if they keep losing, that will change too. So, I mean, you can only be competitive for so many years or for so many games before you start saying, hey, man,
Mac, I don't necessarily like that term, losing the locker room. In some cases, the head coach never had the locker room.
Good point.
Lose.
Very good point.
Mike McCartney over at Dallas. Has he ever gained the locker room? They're talking about country club atmosphere at Dallas. But if a pattern hasn't been established, the culture hasn't been established by that coach right off the bat, it's going to be hard to regain. In a rare case, it is. Look, Bill Parcells, his first year as the Giant coach, they went 3-12-1. It was absolutely awful, okay?
Yes.
And so what happened? He went to see George Young, the GM, because Parcells thought he might get fired.
Right.
Okay? And he talked George Young out of firing him. He said, look, I make mistakes. I tried to get too close to the players, but I'm going to change the culture of this locker room and this team.
Right.
And George Young liked what he heard. And guess what? Bill Parcells changed the culture. Everyone knew who the boss was. He had these great veteran Hall of Fame type players on that team, but they knew Bill Parcells was the man. No one talked back to him. And when Phil Simms tried on the sideline, Parcells pointed his finger at Phil Simms and said, get back. Angrily, he said, and Phil Simms took 2 steps back.
Right.
So I'm not messing with my head coach. And he still respected Bill Parcells a great deal.
Sure. I mean, listen, Donald Trump has checked in and said the GOAT Tom Brady will crush Daniel Jones tomorrow.
Let me tell you, Trump was saying once he thought that his daughter Ivanka might marry Tom Brady. He would have liked that.
Right.
Trump tried to get an NFL team. People might not remember that. When he was with the USFL, he owned the New Jersey Generals, and strictly as a football owner.
Right.
I don't think you would have disliked Trump because he did sign Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie.
Sure.
Those are two high-priced free agents. He got away from the NFL when these guys were coming out of college, and he tried to buy the Buffalo Bills. It didn't work out. But when he took the NFL to court, Trump actually technically won the case.
Right.
But they awarded him the jury $1. So it was kind of really like, you won your case, but here's your dollar,
right.
you know.
Right. In principle,
and
you won your case.
Trump has always had it in for the NFL. So when they had the kneeling controversy, he loved sticking it to the NFL.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it wasn't just about the kneeling to him. It was a personal vendetta that he had with the NFL that went back a while when he tried to swoop in and get a franchise, and didn't quite work. And later he tried to purchase the Buffalo Bills.
Right.
Okay?
But
imagine instead of Washington D.C., as fate would have it, Trump, if he had an office in the Buffalo the whole time, overlooking the Bills. But
that would have been something. Trump was very active in sports, in all sports, really, Jack.
Boxing, he's in the Atlantic City Hall of Fame.
Right.
And the New Jersey Boxing Hall of Fame. So he's been
involved.
He's been around black sports wise. We don't get involved with the politics thing.
No, not at all. But I was glad to see you checked in with us. Hey, listen, we have
Donald Trump checked in with us beforehand.
You can't beat that, Jack.
He wants the state of Florida.
Right.
That's why he's plugging Tom Brady, also saying that the Buccaneers, he wants them to take care of the Giants because there are votes out there in Tampa that could decide that state.
Definitely. I mean, what bigger person watching the show that we can have than than President Donald Trump. So, Jack, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick commercial break here. We're going to come back and we're going to go over the NFL games and do our job, where that we actually break down the games, and we'll do we'll hit the locals, which is one of my favorite things to do because that's what we do. We cover the locals here, Jack. And so we're going to be right back, folks, with our NFL picks, our NFL coverage here of the locals, and what do we think is going to happen. And I'm going to give you, believe it or not, Jack, coming up, I'm going to give you how the Giants can beat, as a coach, a system and strategy, how the Giants can beat Tampa Bay, believe it or not. So what we'll do is we'll take our quick. I got to change this, Jack. I got to change from the seventh inning stretch. I've got to put something like a 2-minute warning, official timeout. I'm going to work on that all weekend, Jack, to see if
it's not that bad. It's not that bad this moment because we're late in the process. Okay.
Right. Well, all right. We'll be right back, folks.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle, some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. A lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information on talking to kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. Thanks for sticking through our little commercials we run. And, Jack, so far we've had a pretty good show. I mean, we've had two really good guests on, one a little controversial, and one that gives us a breakdown of the top three games. And now it's our turn, Jack. We're going to go ahead and break down the games and, of course, get to the locals, which is what we're here to do. So we're going to start off with the Raiders and the Browns, a very interesting game. The Raiders are playing very good ball in under their coach that everybody thought was kind of ruining them, as he made some big trades, getting rid of a lot of big pieces that were with the Raiders before. Gruden has put in place what he wants for his team. They seem to be responding this year to him, and the Browns had a big win against the Bengals last week to kind of quiet the the people who have been negative after they lost games to maybe more competitive teams. So they really haven't beat a competitive team yet, Jack, but they still have a lot of firepower, both on offense. They have a good defense. The Browns should win, but I'm not going to count the Raiders out, Jack.
You're singing the praises of John Gruden, okay? And the Raiders are 3-3. They're not doing anything special. They didn't make the playoffs last year. I mean, is he a good football man? Absolutely. I mean, the guy lives for the game. I mean, you get the feeling that's it's life itself to him, football to John Gruden. It's going to be a big shootout with the Raiders and the Browns today. The defenses are a little spotty there, and you kind of wonder with the Raiders that trade with Khalil Mack, even though they got draft choices back. they could use someone to anchor that defense in the worst way. Baker Mayfield, he had a phenomenal game last week against the Bengals, and he'd been facing a lot of criticism. He badly needed that big game, and if the Browns win, they'll be 6-2.
Right.
They were considered underachievers, so the potential of having a good year is there too. And losing Odell Beckham also, how much a factor that's going to be, we don't know. He targeted Beckham actually more than he did any other receiver, but Beckham didn't have the major impact that they thought he could have when he first came to the Browns.
Yeah, the Browns mainly have gone to a ground and pound, setting Baker up for the play action pass, which I think is smart by them. I don't know if Baker could handle just being one of those throw first, run second, in my opinion, anyway. You got the Colts going up against the Lions. The Colts are in the thick of things in their division. The Lions, with Matt Stafford, have been playing good competitive ball. I don't know. I think the Colts. I don't know, Jack. I mean, I kind of like the Lions in this game. I think the Lions can beat the Colts.
I'll go a step further. I think the Lion defense is really evolving. Lions are 3-3. I think they're going to take off. I could see the Lions definitely at 9-7, 10-6, and being in the playoff picture. That's a team that's actually improving. And with Phillip Rivers, he's not what the Colts hoped they were getting. Coming over from the Chargers. I mean, he's an older quarterback. He's nearing 40, and it's just he has a lot of guile, experience, and so on. And the Colts are deceiving 4-2 this year. They're really not that good, but I just don't see them. I don't see them making the playoffs, and if they do somehow, it's an early exit. I just don't think Phillip Rivers is going to have that story book ending and take to his career and take the Colts to the Super Bowl. We talk about the great quarterbacks in the NFL who never got to the Super Bowl. Phillip Rivers, who I think is going to be a Hall of Famer ultimately, but never get to a Super Bowl.
I definitely agree with that, Jack. We did cover the Steelers and Ravens, but who's your pick, Jack? I'm going to be going with the Steelers. I think their offense is a little bit better than the Ravens' offense.
Early in the week, I said the Ravens are going to win. I'm going to switch that to the Steelers. Okay. I want to see Lamar Jackson get it done against a defense of the Steeler caliber who has a great front seven, who's going to be constantly blitzing them. The pressure squarely on Lamar Jackson. Show me that you're truly an MVP quarterback. Not that he didn't deserve it last year. But show me that you can truly beat an elite defense, okay? And until he shows me that, I'm switching my pick. I'm going to go with the Steelers to beat the Ravens today.
We have the Vikings at the Packers, Jack. The Vikings not having a very good season as was predicted they were going to have. Some predicting the Vikings to go ahead and win the division. The Packers look, besides that Tampa Bay game, Jack, every team has its one bad game. The Packers look like one of the favorites to me to advance. A lot of people aren't talking about them. They're talking about Tampa. They're talking about Seattle. They're talking about some of the West teams. But, watch out for the Packers. And Rodgers this year is having a great year. I can see the Packers. They're favored by 7. Maybe Minnesota keeps it close. But there ain't no reason why the Packers can't beat the Vikings.
The Vikings actually have a decent team. They're 1-5, and that's really puzzling. But this game, playing at Lambeau Field, does them no favors. The wind swirling all over the place, and quarterback's always your key guy. But who's going to know how to handle the wind at Lambeau Field better, Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins? And the Vikings are an enigma. I never thought they'd be at this spot with a 1-5 record. And they're the perfect team to make a late run. But when you dig yourself a hole like this, it's difficult. You can't pick against the Packers in this game. And unfortunately, the Vikings don't get a break in the schedule for them to start waging a little bit of a comeback this year.
We covered this with Anthony Cervino, but we didn't really make a pick. You got the Rams at the Dolphins. The Rams are favored by 3.5. Normally you get 3 points being the home team. So say in LA, the Dolphins would be probably underdogs by 6.5. I don't know, Jack. I'm going to jump on the Dolphins bandwagon for this game at least. I think they have a chance at beating the Rams. I think that the Rams, they played really, really well last week. I think maybe they might be spent, and I'm going to pick the Dolphins in an upset, Jack.
If Tua has a big game in his first start in the NFL, torches the Ram defense, which is very good, Tua is going to be the toast of the NFL tomorrow morning when you wake up. That's what the talk is going to be. And I think Tua is going to be an outstanding quarterback in the league, one of the best. But to go against this Ram team, it's going to be very difficult. The offensive line of the Dolphins isn't that good, and Aaron Donald's going to be over them all game. Not to mention the rest of the Ram defense. Tua just has to play fairly well, and the Dolphins have a shot at winning the game. I mean, they're one of the better developing teams under Brian Flores, but you have to go with the Rams, logically speaking.
The Titans came back strong against Pittsburgh last week. Pittsburgh built up a huge lead. Titans come running back hard. A missed field goal, which could have put it into overtime. That shocked everybody. They missed it. I think the Titans take it out on the Bengals this week, Jack. I can see them, Burrows running for his life. I can see the Titans running all over the Bengals, and I can see a lot of play-action passes after they get Derrick Henry going. I like the Titans big time against the Bengals, Jack.
I agree. That's not much I can add to what you said, but Joe Burrow is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. The Bengals took the right guy. And I can't see there being any talk otherwise about that.
Yeah. He has had a great rookie year.
Comparison might be made ultimately to how he and Tua develop, in the NFL. Because there was some talk that if Tua didn't have injury issues, he would have gone number 1 overall instead of Joe Burrow. I'm not sure that would have been the case. Justin Herbert went number 6 right after Tua. And even though Justin Herbert conceivably might turn out better than both of them, no one's going to say that he should have gone, ahead of Tua and Burrow. But if Tua really is a great, great quarterback and Burrow isn't, there'll be a little blowback. But Burrow is the right guy. Worst case scenario, Burrow's going to be a good NFL quarterback, if not a great one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Burrows, to me, has played great under the pressure he's been on all year. He's really shown that he can handle the NFL. And speaking of, the quarterback you just talked of, the Chargers at the Broncos, the Chargers getting 2.5 points. He's really been playing well, Jack. I mean, he's been throwing the ball, making good decisions, running when he has to. I like the Chargers against the Broncos here.
I do too. They're playing at Mile High Stadium, and the air there, for a passer like Justin Herbert, he's going to light it up against the Broncos. And I'm saying this understanding that the Broncos do have a decent defense.
Yeah.
They really do. The question's this with the Broncos now, is Drew Lock really their quarterback of the future? Last year he finished the year nicely, okay? Right. And there was a carryover into this year where they were giving Drew Lock the job. He hasn't played in all the games. But when he's played, some people are wondering, but you got to allow Drew Lock time to develop. But the danger is when you allow a guy time to develop, you only want that to be the case if he's going to be a quarterback moving forward and he's gaining experience. If it's in the role of an audition, you just don't have time for that in the NFL. Guys can't audition for jobs because that means you're giving up a season. And if he's not going to be your guy the next season, why did you do it all together?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so Drew Lock, the jury's still out a bit with Drew Lock. They think he can be their franchise quarterback, but in Denver, they're not sure about it.
Yes, I agree with almost everything you said there. I mean, Drew Lock, there was talk that he would go even before Daniel Jones in the draft.
And also, he was a second-round draft choice.
Yeah,
when
he
a
fell
guy
off.
isn't taken in the first round, that means a lot of teams aren't high on him.
Or Jack,
Keep that in mind.
or they already have they think they have their quarterback situation where they
But
want.
look at all the other teams that passed.
Yes, I agree.
Sometimes if a quarterback is that good, someone's going to find a way to take them. They really are. I mean, like years ago, for example, when Chad Pennington was there for the Jets at number 18, the Jets had 4 first-round draft choices, and with their third first-round draft choice, they took Chad Pennington at 18 because they just couldn't pass him up. The value was too great. They had Vinny Testaverde at quarterback then.
Right.
They didn't need a quarterback, but sometimes how can you pass a guy up who's there at a certain number because the value is so good?
Yeah, I definitely understand that. You have the Saints at the Bears. Do the Bears bounce back? And their team seems sometimes to play really well, and when they play against the top teams, they seem to have a problem, as they did against the Rams. The Saints, I don't know if they're a top team this year, Jack. I mean, they have their problems. It doesn't look like the offense is clicking on all cylinders. The Saints defense that was supposed to be good didn't look good last week. So do the Bears bounce back this week after that bad loss to the Rams, and do they beat the Saints?
I kind of feel they will, and I look for Nick Foles to have a good game. He was like the mad bomber last week. He kept throwing long passes against the Ram defense, and it was pretty predictable. Michael Thomas is out for the Saints.
Right.
He's a favorite weapon of Drew Brees, and Drew Brees is at a point of his career where he needs his favorite weapons in there because he's not going to do a lot of improvising or so on. And the Bear defense is one of the best in the league as far as I'm concerned. And I think the Bears do beat the Saints today.
Okay, we're both in agreement there. The Patriots and the Bills, very interesting in a lot of aspects. First, the Bills have a 2-game losing streak. This could make them maybe move even farther in the talk of winning the AFC East, which they're favorite to do. The Patriots, this is a huge game for the Patriots, Jack. If they lose to the Bills and they fall another game back, and Cam plays not so good again this week, I mean, their options start to decrease greatly, and their chances also decrease greatly of having a shot at winning the division. A huge game. I don't know how the Bills lose this game unless they lose on a couple turnovers or a big special teams play. I think the Bills win this easily, Jack.
I'm going to tell you something, though. Sean McDermott, the Buffalo Bill head coach, he's played the Patriots 6 times and never beaten them.
Right.
He's coming over to Buffalo as head coach. So until you actually beat them, you can't start the changing of the guard. The Patriots are on the verge of becoming irrelevant for this season, and then people are going to start talking about rebuilding and what the future.
Okay, Jack, I can't hear you right now. Did you hit the mute button by accident?
Yeah, it only takes one victory.
Right.
One victory, okay, for the Patriots, to turn things around. They beat the Bills today. People are going to think maybe the Patriots haven't gone away, and then they make a significant trade before the trade deadline instead of becoming buyers. Instead of becoming sellers, they become a buyer. They win today and they become a buyer and make a significant deal. Then the Patriots haven't officially gone away from their run of these 20 years.
Right.
So today to me, this is the most intriguing game on the schedule. The most intriguing individual performance to me is going to be to see what Lamar Jackson does, even more than Tua.
You mean Cam Newton?
Pass because he's a rookie. But to see the Patriot game, if the Patriots get blown out by the Bills, and we look up, and it's the end of the second quarter and the Bills up 24-0, then you could say there's a changing of the guard going on before our eyes.
I definitely think it's a more important game for the Patriots than it is the Bills. The Bills could afford a loss here, but I don't think they do, Jack. I think it's a statement game. If the Bills don't win today, you're going to have a lot of people questioning how good the Bills really are after these two losses. So we move to another big game, another franchise that looks like it's falling hard to the third-string quarterback, Jack. You got the Cowboys against the Eagles, who have shown some life lately. They made that big comeback win against the Giants. Even though, the Giants aren't a top-level team, you still got to win games, and you still should beat who you're supposed to be. The Eagles came back. They won that game in the last 11 seconds. The Cowboys look like they're in a spiral. I think we're going to see what the Cowboys are made of this week, Jack, and we're going to see what Coach McCarthy, what he has as far as the team behind him in the locker room. You have an Eagles defense that's always pretty good, a little step back this year. You got an offense that seems to be finding some kind of rhythm. I think the Eagles win big today, Jack.
They should. And then the focus isn't going to be on what the Eagles did. It's going to be on what the Cowboys did. And the Cowboys have a third-string quarterback, completely unproven in today. They're not likely to go into Philadelphia and win that game. Listen, Dallas traditionally has a nickname, America's team. They're not even Dallas's team. They've got the Dallas Stars that made it to the NHL Finals. They have the Dallas Mavericks, who've been a fairly decent NFL team, NBA team, a team that's on the rise, okay? But Dallas is a mess. Jerry Jones is not going to get rid of Mike McCarthy, not this year. Mike McCarthy is going to be back next year. One way or the other, they're going to work it out. Jerry Jones has a reputation of sticking with his coaches, but maybe he gave McCartney too much responsibility, and he's perceived Jerry Jones as a meddler, but maybe the problem is he hasn't gotten involved. Maybe he should get a little involved more, because that culture with that locker room's got to change.
Jack.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, the thing I saw that I really didn't like when McCarthy took over, and why I always question Jerry Jones, is they kept the same offensive coordinator who was calling the plays for Dallas last year, and he's still the offensive coordinator this year. If I was Mike McCarthy, every one of those coaches would have been gone. I would have brought in my whole new staff, especially a coordinator, because now you have Jerry Jones, who basically moved that offensive coordinator to offensive coordinator, and had our offensive coordinator this year. He ended up not calling the plays, which was it seems to me that Jerry Jones' tentacles is in everything. And I think when you hire a head coach, he makes the decisions who his coaching staff is, who his coordinators are, not Jerry Jones.
Well, I'm going to say this. Mike Nolan was brought in as the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, and he had a relationship with Mike McCartney going back. But Mike Nolan was out of the league a few years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden come back. I mean, things change. Technology changes. Things around the NFL change. And to be away for a while and to just come back. I mean, listen, Daniel Snyder could bring Joe Gibbs back as the coach of the Washington Redskins, and Gibbs would be lost at this point. Things change, around the league. And what happened to Dallas? They have some wonderfully talented players. They had some real weapons. And, and it's more than Zach Prescott. Even if Zach Prescott were there, they weren't playing well.
No.
So,
Again, Jack, in my opinion, you put Schneider in there too, but I think those two owners are way too involved in the coaching aspect and the daily operations of the team. So our big game, being from New York, is the Giants and the Buccaneers, Jack. We have the Giants, who, as you say, have been competitive for most of the times they've played. They really haven't held on to the lead, or haven't had enough to get over the top and win that game. I don't know, Jack. before we get to the Chiefs and the Jets, I think the only way possible to beat Tampa Bay this year, and if I was coaching the Giants, you cannot let Tom Brady sit back there in zone coverage and let him throw the ball wherever he wants. You're going to lose the game. The Giants showed how they could beat Brady in the Super Bowls. You've got to get a tremendous amount of pressure on them, and that means with 4 pass rushers, they have a 3-man line right now, and they bring a blitz, which Brady will recognize. If you go with a front 4 who can put pressure on Brady the whole game, and especially in his face, you have a shot at making him nervous, as you do every quarterback, but especially this kind of quarterback who relies on timing, who relies on people being where they're supposed to be. And, of course, they got to shut down the run. On offense, Jack, they got to establish a running game. They have to get the running game going. They cannot let Jones, like last year, go back and beat Tampa like he did last year. It's not the same Tampa Bay team. So the 2 important things, I think, for the Giants to even have a chance, and not that they'll win, but to have a chance at beating Tampa Bay, a front 4 rush, get in Brady's face, throwing off the timing, and then getting a running game going, for God's sakes, for 1 game at least. That's the only way I can see it happen.
Well, you talk about the running game, and the most underrated play in the NFL is Jones, not Daniel Jones, of course, Rodney Jones, the Tampa Bay Buccaneer running back, never given the credit he deserves. And with Tampa Bay has some injuries. Everyone has injuries and so on. Tampa Bay is not the absolute lock in this game that people think they are. They're 10-point favorites, so on. But the Giants are playing hard, and it's not going to be a lopsided game by any means. I mean, I think this is a type of game that when we enter the 4th quarter, the Giants are going to actually be in a position to win it. So I think it's about execution, lack of turnovers, balls can't be dropped. I think Evan Ingram, what can I say about his situation, with the Giants? Because we're looking at the trade deadline. All the NFL teams saw this game, but especially a team like the Giants, who they might sell off. I mean, the Buccaneers are basically set. I mean, I'll be shocked if they pick anyone else up. I think Antonio Brown was the last piece they picked up, but he won't be eligible to come back for a couple of more games.
Right.
And logic says that the Buccaneers should win the game, but I see this as a very difficult game for them. The Giants have been in virtually every game this year, and I don't see why it should be different. I'll be shocked if the Buccaneers completely dominate this game. I think we're coming to a close here. The Jets, what can I say? I mean, I can't see any way of them beating the Chiefs. You were going to go there next, Mac.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I could see that could happen was the Chiefs take the Jets really lightly and they play sloppy and maybe give the Jets an outside chance of maybe, keeping it close. I mean, I don't see any way the Chiefs should lose to the Jets. This is like a pro team basically playing a college team. I mean, I don't see it happening. The only way I can see, Jack, is the Chiefs don't even get ready to play. They just think they're going to walk on the field and win this, and the Jets kind of give it to them for maybe a half or 3/4. But I don't see the Jets having a chance at beating the Chiefs.
The Chiefs can beat the Jets playing at half speed. I hate to say it. I mean, the Jets just aren't very good. It might not be the effort of the Jets. Let me quickly say it might be just a question. The personnel's not there at this point.
Right. So
Le'Veon Bell, what's he? And they're going to try to feature him a lot. Andy Reid's going to want to have Le'Veon Bell feel really good today. So that's the storyline. So I'm predicting Le'Veon Bell rushes for over 100 yards today. That's my prediction.
And I'm hoping he fumbles 3 times and gets
so too, Matt,
beat up pretty bad. Jack, we're closing out the show, but big show coming up, guys, for this Wednesday coming up when we start up. We're going to have 2-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time All-Pro center for the Giants.
How did you do that, Mac? You got a Super Bowl champion here.
Yes, sir.
How did you do that from the Giants?
Some secrets are better left kept, Jack. And we also have the most popular, I would say the most popular Giants broadcaster in the business today, Lance Meadow, also going to be joining us. So there'll be a lot of Giants talk Wednesday. We'll also cover the rest of the locals, as you know. Thanks, people, for joining in. Enjoy Sunday football. It's going to be a great show this week, great games. And, Jack, we'll see each other again on Wednesday.
And Brian Kenny from Major League Baseball Network, we're going to have on Thursday.
Yes, sir. So we got some real big guests coming up this week, folks. Stay tuned, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Have a great Sunday. Take care of each other. And, Jack, another good show. We'll see you Wednesday, my friend.
Yeah, great. I'll prepare the debate things and you'll decide whatever. Okay?
Sounds great, Jack.
Yeah, I do a fight with